Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. Today is Monday, September 17th, 2018. Tonight's topic: Trump declassifies FISA warrant, text messages, and gold and silver are flat. We're going to talk about a lot of events that are really unprecedented, and we're not seeing much of a move, if at all, in gold and silver. Let's take a look at gold and silver today. Well, gold and silver did manage a slight increase today, but then they fell off in the after hours trading. Silver opened around 1404. It rose all the way up to 1423 before noon, and then it leveled off in the 415 range and has since, in the after hours, dropped back down to about 1409. It was the same story for gold. Gold started out around 1194, climbed up over the 1200 mark, up to 1204, and it's fallen back to about 1198. Over on the cryptocurrencies, another beat down today on the cryptocurrencies. Something about a whale and one of the large Bitcoin wallets sold. What I always find intriguing is when Bitcoin gets hit because of a big sale, it takes down the other cryptocurrencies with it, even though you would imagine, so for example, if Mt. Gox is selling Bitcoin, not sure why that brings down the other coins, but it seems to, although recently when Bitcoin goes down, it goes down 3 or 4%, and then Bitcoin Cash goes down 7 or 8%. So does Litecoin. Ethereum goes down even more. So the closing prices today, well, not closing prices, the last 24 hours. This is Coinbase, 62.51 for Bitcoin, down about 4% over the last 24 hours. Bitcoin Cash at 418, down about 7.5%. Ethereum fell below 200, down to 196, about 11% down. And Litecoin down to 52.22, down about 8.5%. Remember, we talked last night about stable coins. Clearly, these are not. These are just daily moves, 8, 9, 10, 11% for Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Ethereum. Not uncommon for them to swing 10% in a 24-hour period, and sometimes it only catch your eye if they drop 20%. All right, let's talk about what happened today. There's breaking news now here, and it's from the statement from the press secretary issued about 2 hours ago. It says, at the request of a number of committees of Congress, that would be the Republicans, and for reasons of transparency, the president has directed the Office of the Director of the National Intelligence and Department of Justice, including the FBI, to provide for immediate declassification of the following materials. 1. Pages 10 to 12 and 17 to 34 of the June 17th application to the FISA court in the matter of Carter W. Page. I believe Rod Rosenstein is the one who signed that application. He is the one who appointed the special counsel, Robert Mueller. So keep that in mind. 2. All FBI reports of interviews with Bruce G. Orr prepared in connection with the Russian investigation, and all FBI reports of interviews prepared in connection with all Carter Page FISA applications. In addition, President Donald J. Trump has directed the Department of Justice, including the FBI, to publicly release all text messages relating to the Russia investigation without redaction of James Comey, who was the former FBI director, Andrew McCabe, the former deputy FBI director, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, and Bruce Orr. Now, I'm not going to get into all of this would take a while to, as they say, unpack and go through the ramifications as to who might be involved, who might be exposed. I'm not going to get into that right now, but just to note that I believe that there's a tremendous amount of political uncertainty and turmoil in how all this turns out. I'm going to break that down, not as to what all this means, but just to show where the sides are. You have essentially the mainstream media press, other than Fox News, daily trying to take down the president in any way they can with stories. They even blamed the Hurricane Florence on him. The Washington Post editorial board said there's a hurricane coming and Trump is complicit. Woodward, who was part of the Bernstein-Woodward investigative team who helped bring Nixon down through finding out all the misdeeds. He wrote a book, but he was not interested in the investigations and how the Russian investigation got started into Trump or the Hillary Clinton investigation. He was more focused just on demonstrating that Donald Trump was unstable and that the 25th Amendment should be evoked to get him removed. So he didn't find any evidence of Russian collusion, which is what one side believes on the mainstream media side, the Democratic side. He didn't find any evidence of Russian collusion. And he also, on the other side, did no investigative work as to whether there was any type of collusion, so to speak, between the FBI, the DOJ, and the media to bring down Donald Trump with Russian charges. Now, the press, for the most part, the mainstream media press seems, as I mentioned, to be very much determined to bring the president down. They're pushing this 25th Amendment narrative almost as strong now as they once were pushing the Russian collusion narrative and then the obstruction of justice narrative. And then you see former FBI directors like James Comey going on book tours, bad-mouthing the president, justifying their actions. The guy who's even worse is John O'Brien, who has used some very choice words for the president. Then he goes on MSNBC and CNN, and he trashes the president. Then the president takes away his security clearance. So you got that on one side. You have a very anti-Trump, impeach Trump, 25th Amendment Trump, and it's been nonstop for 2 years. Starting with the minute he won the election, they wanted a recount. Then they started with the Russian thing, then the P-gate and the dossier, and it hasn't let up. Now, on the other side, you have Trump supporters who believe that the president is being unfairly treated, and Fox News and others have been digging into a lot of the publicly available documents from the former and current FBI, DOJ actors in how they acted during the Hillary Clinton investigation and the start of and the conducting of the Mueller investigation. They believe that there's a tremendous amount of corruption involved and that many of these actors, possibly all the way up to the president, did unspeakable acts using the government to essentially try to influence the election and then change the or try to take out a duly elected president. So they have that view, and they believe that the media and the social media giants and the former FBI and DOJ were all in cahoots to do this. Now, there's evidence that that is happening, and you don't see people like Woodward or the media investigating this because, in a sense, part of them are complicit in, they're actors in this battle because they're the Washington Post, New York Times are often, BuzzFeed are often the conduits for which the FBI and the DOJ would leak information that was damaging to the president on this Russia thing. And then on the Fox News side, they're constantly pulling out the documents that show that there's a leaking strategy and that the FBI indeed did use the media to do this. So you have this very much a divided, I would say, very, very divided country where both sides are convinced. You talk to a person who's against Trump, they're either convinced that Trump is going down from Russian collusion, for campaign law violations. He's going down for something, but they're pretty convinced that Putin was involved in the election. That's the only reason he won, and that all of his supporters are just out of their mind, deplorable, dregs, racist, whatever it is. If you talk to Trump supporters, they believe that the left and the mainstream media are all part of a grand conspiracy against the president, and that they use unfair tactics, illegal tactics, using social media, using the mainstream media, and using the DOJ and other parts of government to commit illegal acts in order to bring down the president. There is not a middle ground on this, it doesn't seem. It seems that you either, or people are just tuned out and they don't care one way or the other. But if you talk to a Trump supporter or an anti-Trumper, they really don't seem to have much knowledge of what the other side thinks. They're very much convinced that what they know is correct and that there's really there's nothing else involved. That's a very toxic mix for politics, and you would think all this turmoil would have driven the stock market down because there's a potential for impeachment. And remember, there's two sides to this. If one side wins, it's Trump gets impeached, he goes out in disgrace. If the other side wins, then the entire apparatus of the former FBI, DOJ, mainstream media all gets tagged with their collusion, and Trump issues executive orders against the tech companies, and then there's a real battle there, but it looks like then that side wins. So I think that's all very much political turmoil, but the markets seem to be shrugging this off. Now, if that's not bad enough, that's one big issue. You then have this tariff issue, which no one is really paying attention to. Trump's just going to add another $200 billion worth of tariffs. So far, the markets have not reacted to any adverse impacts that might happen from the tariffs. You have the emerging markets meltdown in their currencies, and we don't really see any impact. Now, part of this could be because the U.S. is considered the safe haven when it comes to emerging market crises and so on, but it actually exacerbates things. If people rush to the dollar, that makes it worse for the emerging market countries to pay back their debt because it's dollar-denominated debt, which means that if they can't pay, then there's potential for contagion, which could spread, and that just makes the dollar strong, which then makes it even worse and harder for the emerging market countries to meet their payments, which leads to further contagion. So I don't see how none of this doesn't seem to be bothering anybody. And then today you saw, just to illustrate the divide, over the last couple of days, Senator Dianne Feinstein has introduced evidence or a charge and asked the FBI to look at it, which they're not going to do, but the senators are going to listen to a charge of some type of sexual misconduct by Brett Kavanaugh, who is a nominee for the Supreme Court. And again, the way it was done, I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of whether the charges are correct or when and what's the proper time to hear accusations. That's not the purpose of the discussion. The purpose is that Dianne Feinstein had this information, and it's the timing of it in that showing that the Democrats and Republicans are not working at all together, because if she had this information, she had it in July. If the parties were working well together, she would have presented it to Chuck Grassley, and they would have said, all right, let's look at this, let's think about this. And then Feinstein could have explained to, is it Grassley or McConnell? I'm not sure who she would have gone to, probably McConnell. She would have gone to him and said, okay, we need to bring her in. She doesn't want to come in. What do we do about it? But instead, she just dropped it off at the FBI and then announced it. And that shows that basically they're not looking to work together to get a nominee. They're looking to scuttle this one, and using those types of tactics indicates they're not interested whatsoever. And you saw the same thing on trying to get to the bottom of the FISA warrant and all the information regarding the Russian investigation. It broke down on party lines. You got the Republican committee wants to see documents, wants the FBI, DOJ to give away documents, and the Democrats don't want to see it at all. In fact, when they were released, most of them didn't even want to go look at them. And it just seems that you have this political turmoil in the U.S., and maybe it's that, the country just carries on, and the Democrats and Republicans can squabble all they want, and it doesn't matter. And that's why the markets aren't really reacting. I don't know. We'll get your thoughts. But the point is that the gold and silver markets really didn't react at all today, very much. In fact, when the political turmoil hit is kind of when the gold and silver prices headed south. Same thing with cryptocurrencies. They're no safe haven. I actually think there's a very toxic political environment right now, and we're going to see changes in November with potential changes from Democrat to Republican Congress or Senate or neither or both. Who knows? But it's not going to get any more calm, and I'm just very surprised that we're seeing no move, at least for gold and silver, on uncertainty. We're not seeing any real degradation in the equity markets, and the dollar pretty much didn't react at all today. So I'd like to get your thoughts. Well, it reacted. It went down for a while, but it didn't go down that much. It started about 94.90, the dollar index. Actually, it did go down a bit. It went down to 94.58. But all in all, I don't think the markets are reacting. Now, sometimes when you get these types of big political moves, once it sinks in that the declassification of all these documents, I would think you don't even have to know what's in them, but you can project that there's probably something in there that might be of some type of, I wouldn't say game changer, but some type of bombshell that might throw things into turmoil. However, one of the things that's interesting probably is that a lot of the media outlets that were part and parcel of disseminating some of these leaks, in a sense being actors in the Russian collusion story, they may not play up these stories at all, and they may try to bury the fact, even though the president has declassified a number of very important documents. They may just say, well, this is just him being desperate and he's worried about Mueller. Oh, who knows? And I think that's a good portion of it too. During the Nixon time period, when the corruption was at the Nixon White House, there were all the reporters circling it, trying to uncover smoking guns, and eventually they did. They had the tapes and so on. In this case, where the real investigation is how the FBI, I think, ran their investigation, both to how the Hillary Clinton seemed to have gotten away with having the private server, using, allowing classified information to be hacked, and then the Russian collusion story, which more and more is becoming clear. They never had any reason to believe and never had any evidence that there was any Russian collusion. But it's interesting, if you talk to people who are anti-Trumpers, they're convinced that there was. But if you read the documents, and maybe it's because maybe we're only hearing selected documents, it doesn't seem that the people involved ever thought that there was. And now apparently the declassification of these documents may show that. But again, we may not hear that because most of the media may not report on it and may just say that this is just some type of far right-wing conspiracy led by Trump. Who knows? But I would think you can't hide the actual facts, and at some point the facts will, I believe, indeed create some type of political turmoil. And I guess the reason that the markets aren't reacting, gold, silver aren't reacting, is they haven't seen it yet and they don't want to anticipate it, so they just carry on their merry way. Anyway, that's what I think. I can't explain it any other way, but let's take a look and see what we got in the comments. Joni Titterman, for mugs' sakes, Lewis, gold and silver are always flat. Yes, but mugs are always up. Otherwise, we would have spears in our mugs causing cracks in the mugs. That is correct. Walden Tree, this toxic mix has been created on purpose. Okay, well, this is an interesting comment. The real deep state both supports and opposes Trump. Now, that's an interesting theory. And I actually thought that from what you read on the one side, about all the stuff that struck Page, Comey, all the things that they did, Comey leaking to his friend so his friend can give the information to the New York Times so that they can get a special counsel, and then Rosenstein appointing a special counsel, Mueller, and the reason Rosenstein did it was because Sessions was recused from Russia, and then Rosenstein recommending that Trump fire Comey. It all seems either too cute or somehow contrived. I mean, maybe Rosenstein, Sessions, all of them are in on it. And it's all part of, like you say, maybe part of a way of supporting and opposing to keep that yin-yang going. Few of the players we see or the public know this. That's a very interesting theory. I can't explain it. Unlike, though, most people insist they know what's going on. I'm telling you, I have no idea what's going on. Most people, it's the same with gold and silver. They tell you this just happened and it means gold set the skyrocket, silver set the skyrocket. I lean certain ways on what might happen, but I can't convince myself, or certainly not anyone else, that the commercials going long for the first time in 17 means silver set to skyrocket. I also can't say that the release of these, declassification of these documents is going to lead definitively to any type of change in how things have been going so far. I would think it should, if there's anything in there, end the Mueller probe, and basically they would wind that up, and the news reporters would report on it and say it looks like maybe they did this investigation for nothing. But there's no way they're going to do that. Even if, I believe, even if there are like 1,000 smoking guns, they're not going to move away from it. They're going to still say, oh, well, Mueller has some stuff up his sleeve. Who knows? Because I believe that their two sides are too dug in on impeach 45 and that kind of stuff, and on the other side they just believe that the rest of the world is against them. And you know, when you hear Biden say that the dregs of the earth, and you see the bias and the shadow banning and the booting from platforms by the social media companies, and then you see how the mainstream media covers Trump, it's not an unreasonable position to take. All right, but then again, who knows why it's happening? The deep state backs Russia too. Well, could be. We already chipped. All right, if Americans only embrace bears and mugs, Putin would be let stuff slide. Well, that's true. All right, well, anyway, I just want to give an update on the gold and silver markets against the backdrop, which to me doesn't seem like there is any there was no impact on today's news on the gold and silver market. So the question is, what will move these markets if it's not political turmoil? It's not economic turmoil, because we certainly didn't see anything on the Chinese tariff moves. So we'll just have to wait and see. Thanks for listening.